The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners is one of the most successful and popular VR games ever made. It's still one of the biggest selling titles and is regularly in top 50 platform chart sales. Now what I wanted to do today is rediscover what Saints and Sinners did well that made it so popular. For those who don't know the story, you are known as the Tourist, and you meet up with an old guy called Henri who is on the verge of a great discovery called the Reserve. The Reserve is kind of a legendary myth in the game at this point, but it's something that is sought after by everyone who is alive after the flood and the zombies is filled with weapons, ammo, meds and food, and was originally meant for the army to fight back against the onslaught, but it never happened. Now when it comes to Henri, unfortunately, as you start the game, they get hold of the old boy, torture him for his info, but he doesn't give anything away, and you take on his role and continue his legacy to find the Reserve. And he also wants you to save the guy locked inside the Reserve, which is now fast being filled with water. Now I'm not going to tell you what you have to do in the game, but one thing I love about this is the story is full of choices. You can be the good guy and help everyone you come across, or you can simply shoot all of them, skipping much of the dialogue, and take everything for yourself, which in itself is a great reason to play the game at least twice. There's tons of unlockables in this game based on what you scavenge. For example, you might want to focus on different attributes, or unlocking more weapons, or unlocking more survival perks, and it literally depends on what you scavenge and how you focus on it. I personally always scavenge and focus on survival, so I can move faster while I'm crouched, I have more stamina, and a bigger bag. The weapons are also fantastic and really do appear to be made out of the stuff found in the world, like street signs and scrap and wire. All of this adds up to the feeling you're actually in this world surrounded by warring factions, and even though the game is all about zombies, the really dangerous part are the people left alive. Now if you want, you can literally shoot your way throughout this entire campaign, but playing it stealthily and doing the tasks to win favour with the different factions is also just as rewarding. There's tons of stuff littered around the world, and making use of the daylight of each day to get the most amount of loot in itself is very addictive. Every time you go to sleep and start a new day, the number of undead increases and supplies dwindle, so you end up trying to juggle doing the next objective while also trying to make the most of every single run for yourself, and it's pretty addictive. When I first stepped back into the world of Saints and Sinners, I was very impressed with the visuals. It's pretty striking, even though it's not realistic looking. It has more of a comic book style, especially when it comes to the characters, but they are all full of expression and the voice work is excellent. And everything I picked up and looked at has rust and dirt, and generally all the items are in a state of decay. The game's survival focus is basically a balancing act, and even though Saints and Sinners doesn't have hunger and thirst elements, you still need to eat and drink sometimes to offset your actions and your playstyle. You can't run around and stab everything without consequence, because stamina is the one thing you'll definitely have to keep your eye on the most. If you keep draining your stamina, your permanent amount of stamina diminishes as a punishment, causing you to not always go in for the attack, and make sure you have stew to replenish your stamina back to full. Now you really find this stew out and about, which means you need to craft it back at the camp, and that's the cycle that I like so much. The survival element is also not overly complicated like some of the other games I've played, where survival is a key part of the game and becomes an annoyance, but it does enough to stay on your mind. I'll never forget the first time I swung a two-handed axe in Saints and Sinners and saw after only my second swipe my stamina dwindling. I brought this up to someone at Skydance while at Gamescom getting an early look at Chapter 2, and he replied, "You have to remember, your character has been starved of any nutritious food for well over 2 years. There's no gyms, there's no healthcare, there's no vitamins, and that's why you're so weak." And I actually thought, wow, that's actually a pretty cool explanation. Even holding an axe single-handed seems extremely heavy in this game, and I remember going from being annoyed to actually appreciating the thought that had gone into this. While we're on the subject of the stabbing mechanic, it's probably the most satisfying thing I've ever felt in any VR game. If you swing the knife with enough momentum, it will pierce a human or zombie skull instantly, but if you're too slow, you may only pierce the skin, and this leaves you to have to thrust it again, which in itself is very satisfying, and then you have to pull the weapon out with force. It's things like this that just make the game not necessarily realistic, but just very satisfying. Health as a mechanic is dealt very similarly to as the stamina, but if you play smart, it's very easy to manage, and you'll find many small bottles that give you full health back while you're on a run, which in itself is very different to the stamina. The weapons also break and can't be repaired, and some can be found, but the best ones are usually only available through crafting. Another thing that stood out to me was how the zombies are a threat to everyone. Regularly you'll see NPCs being attacked or trying to protect important areas they're fixed in, so I started doing things like getting the attention of zombies and luring them into the NPCs' camps, and while they're busy dealing with the zombie, it made sneaking into these areas even easier. And if you've never played this before, you'll have a watch on your left wrist, and this will let you know when the bells will ring. And when those bells ring, the zombies go absolutely crazy. So basically, you only have the daytime to search around and complete your mission. It's all these little things that overall I feel this game definitely still needs to be celebrated, and I can see why it's still so highly regarded by the community. And if you haven't picked it up or played it in a long time, I would definitely say it's worth jumping back into, because there's still not many games where you just feel so connected to the world and the items in it. And there's quite a deep story if you choose to play the game that way, or you can simply murder everyone. And both these play styles are very rewarding and, more importantly, super fun. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you to anyone who likes and subscribes, and remember to let me and others know if there's any classics like The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners you're replaying in 2026.